Hi, I'm Paul Santinello. Welcome to The Upside. On today's show, we're going to be talking about some issues that are facing our town. I have a guest today, Richard Foster. Richard and I served on the select board for a number of years. And Rich, so welcome to the show.
Thank you, Paul.
Why I wanted to do this show is we're in the middle of August right now, and there's a lot of issues that are going to be facing our town in the coming months. Not just operational issues, but big projects like middle school rebuild and things like that. And some of the items we're going to discuss today, I feel, don't get enough attention or thought about what we're doing. So what I want to start with is I want to talk about Rich's background and the reason why he's here. He's a nice guy, and that's one reason to talk to him. But his background is in facility maintenance, road constructions. I don't want to take away from what you do, but if you want to give me a little bit of your background.
Okay, Paul.
Yep.
Yeah, I actually spent 30-some years in the federal service, both in the military and with the National Park Service. I worked in maintenance all those years. I started in the trenches and ended up in an office. I was chief of maintenance at the 4th largest national park in the system, maintenance operation-wise, when I retired. In addition to that, I also participated as an instructor and board of regent member at an NC-sponsored school for maintenance managers for 17 years, and where we taught people how to actually set up maintenance operations and implement and control and monitor. So I have a fairly extensive background in the identification and formation of maintenance operations to correct deficiencies and put them programmatically in place.
Okay, thank you. And that's just to give you a background about, Rich's background. Mine is, sometimes don't know what I'm talking about, but I have someone who does. So one of the things I want to talk to you about is about, I'd say 12 years ago, because I've been off the select board for 9 years now, there was a plan that was developed by Mr. Foster and myself, an idea. It was just a thought about 10 projects that were going on, that were going to be facing the town in the next coming years. And we said this is an idea. We tried to get the select board at that time to adopt the idea to charge the town manager to look into these proposals. And it's all things that are on the agenda now, which is middle school consolidation, what do you do with the properties, the Blinn tennis courts, and the renovation of some of our parks and so forth. So one of the things I wanted to talk about is, before we get into some of the things, the big things, if we look around, what gets me a little bit irritated why we're here, part of why we're here today, it's the middle of August and potholes have not been repaired. Right? So potholes that occur during the winter, in the wintertime we have something called cold patch. Right? Which is a temporary solution, always meant to be temporary, it's not permanent. Right? It doesn't, a lot of times it fails once you put it in because
it always fails.
Yes, okay. Yeah. So come summertime or springtime is when the plants reopen for asphalt and you start to do your patching.
Right. Now, the town, by the way, did purchase some fairly sophisticated equipment about 7-8 years ago to do winter patching. They bought a hot box and a milling machine, a small milling machine. At that time, they had a workforce that they could actually go out and do hot patch, winter patching, which was kind of unique because you're right, the plant shut down. But they were able to reconstitute some of the old mix. They had the fines ground up, and they were able to do some patching. That has disappeared. Apparently, the people retired or somebody in that equipment is still sitting up there right now at maintenance complex.
But in the course of maintaining roads, my question always is, when do potholes get repaired?
Potholes get repaired as they occur, and you do a final repair in the spring after you get through your freeze-thaw cycle. That's when you go in and you cut them square, you patch them properly. You just don't throw a little asphalt in and run over with a truck. There's an absolute maintenance procedure. It's MDOT's got it, or MassDOT will tell the people how to do it. There's specialty schools that they can go off and learn how to do these procedures. But no, at this time of the year, that should be all done.
Right. And so my point is that we're trying not to have a total bitch session here, if I can say that, but it's to just bring awareness of quality of life issues in Long Meadow. A lot of people move here for the schools, which we all acknowledge. I didn't. I moved here because I used to come in this community and see people walking their dogs and families walking and so forth, and we didn't have children yet. But the schools are important. All my kids have gone through it. They've gone K through 12. They've all done well coming out of it. But the little things, it's always the little things in life that have an effect on your quality of life. When you're driving around town and if potholes can't be repaired by August, we have a bigger problem, I think, going on within our infrastructure, so to speak.
We do, Paul. You've heard me talk this before. I have something I call C maintenance, and it's not with the C, it's with your eyes. And every time I walk or drive a roadway or through a community, I'm looking for the what we call low-hanging fruit maintenance items. Potholes, crooked signs, signs you can't read, tree limbs in front of a sign blocking a visual view of the sign. The things you see with your eyes. I'm especially trim mowing, especially in the high visibility areas like our green. There's nothing irks me more than I see the mower in there mow the whole green down and leave weeds this high around the post. And they sit there for 2 or 3 weeks until finally somebody knocks them down. I don't know, maybe somebody complains. So when I see these items, very noticeable items like potholes, manhole covers especially. I mean, manhole covers are there year-round right now. I measured 3 of them yesterday. The standard is less than a 1/4 inch or less depression. Yep. You never take them higher, you always take them a little bit lower. And mind you, it does take some thinking to get them positioned properly. I measured 3 of them on Long Meadow Street yesterday, just random 3. They were anywhere from 1 to 2 inches drop. Yep. So you can tell how far out the standard. Now the problem is, it's not so much that it's down that way, but every traffic that goes over there, every car goes over there, pounds them deeper because there's a shock therapy with that vehicle and intensifies the loading and it keeps crushing. Whatever's failing under that manhole is being crushed and it's going down deeper and deeper and eventually will go into catastrophic failures if they can collapse and go into whatever the structure is below there. So when you see these things, you don't need to look at the advanced planning because if this is not being done, you don't have much hope that the advanced planning is proper.
Right.
I mean, it's what's called reactive.
Right. And by your advanced planning, what you mean is that we know that, there's water and sewer projects going on in town right now. That's there's been 4 water main breaks at Emerson over the time.
Right.
They're now doing Emerson over with some sort of water or sewer project that's going on.
Well, it sounds like a complaint, but it's an actual thing for people who live over in Inverness. There's a manhole over there that's failed since I've been in town 13, 14 years. It's failed 4 times. And it's failed again now. And this last time, they just dumped some dirt behind the curb on it, where the hole is. And I'm waiting now for wherever there's a failure. And these have been repaired all 3 times or 4 times by a contractor.
Okay.
I mean, this has had attention, but it's been there, I think the last time it was there close to a year before it was corrected. And anybody who lives on Inverness, I know as they come around the corner, they got to be very careful because there's safety cones out there. There's no warning signs, and it's not good. It's not representative of a strong maintenance program.
Right. So when we look at this, my favorite expression was from a former selectman years ago that said Long Meadow's a town with 99 miles of roads and it's 9 square miles, and it really hasn't changed over the last 70 years.
No.
Maybe a house here, a home there,
Right.
A small street that was put in like over by off of Williams and so forth, but nothing
Right.
dramatic to change it. Right, our streets have been plowed, our maintenance we're off. Things have changed in those in that time frame, especially in the last 10 years or so, to where some of these things just aren't getting the attention that they need to get.
Right. And I think, Paul, if you went behind the screen and got into what they call the black box of maintenance, if you peel the covers back and you look inside of that box, there should be a fairly detailed maintenance plan that says, how do we address, say, the landscape areas in town? Now, we have it's not internationally famous, but it certainly is a local famous section of land called the Green. Anybody that searches on the internet, you can usually find this mentioned.
Right.
This is a very, very unique feature in our community. It goes back into the 1600s, et cetera, et cetera. When you stand and look at the Green, and I've mentioned this to you before, when you look at the Green, it's filled with crabgrass and weeds and irregular mowing patterns and Christmas lights hanging off a tree, which I don't understand year-round, this type of stuff. And then I say, okay, well, I saw that as a standard. Then I go up and I look at Williams Field, for instance, and I see this pristine, almost professional grade field, and it makes me stand back and I say, okay, now I understand the priorities. I see where they're putting their money and their energies, but it's not in a prime resource, it's in a secondary resource. So then you question, why is the secondary resource receiving that much attention? It's yield to public opinion, is what is happening. So you have a maintenance program that should be instilled and under everything that's functioning. And above that, then you have these special need things. But in our case, the special needs seem like they're getting the most attention, and the maintenance plan is up here. Whatever time we got left or money, then we'll go ahead and do our routine. That's what I see with my eyes.
Yeah. Okay, good. So one of the things I want to talk about is those are regular maintenance kind of things. Those are the daily operational type of things that are going on.
Let me preference one thing. By the way, I'm not anti-sports.
Yep.
I don't want that to come across. I'm not anti-beautiful fields and recreation areas. You've known me for years. I believe in uniform balancing of your operations.
Yeah.
Everything should get the appropriate degree of attention, and we have this lopsided effect that's taking place.
No, and I mean, I agree. Listen, you can't have public spaces, and again, some of this goes back to quality of life, right?
Right.
All right. Schools are important.
Right.
Roads are just as important.
Absolutely.
And someone will say you're crazy, but if you can't get your kid to school safely,
Right.
right? I drive over a manhole as I take a left onto a Bliss Road from Long Meadow Street. That it has a nice big bang on my truck because it's depressed.
Right.
Right, it's a major intersection, right? And I get it, stuff fails, and I understand that. Everything does have its useful life, including me. But in the reality, though, is that if it's the little things that aren't being taken care of, whether it's the town green, which isn't a little thing,
No.
right? How many more people utilize the town green or drive by it, and when you're looking at it visually, than a field, right? So the issue is that none of these things are more or less important than others. And I think when it comes to like field maintenance, I think that, like you said, they should be similar across the board, right? There are things that are a little bit more important, and public safety is important. And if you can't plow your roads, if you can't maintain your roads, and I'll give you an example, driving here from taking a left onto Bliss Road from Long Meadow Street, you come across 2 plates before you get to the LCTV
Right.
studios. And the oncoming traffic, the westbound traffic, has to go into the eastbound lane to avoid these plates that are over manhole covers.
Right.
And I understand things can't get fixed right away all the time because of the economy. Things are going really well, and construction's under a lot of pressure. But it's a safety issue. It's no longer an aesthetic that it looks terrible, because you can't see it really. It's under a
Right.
plate. But it's a safety issue because school's starting in 2 weeks, and you're going to have traffic going this way with school buses and so forth. Those are the kind of things I think that you need to look at and ask questions about. And it's not, again, it's something to be aware of, because if the pressure, like you said, of doing certain things, special interest, if you don't talk about those kind of things, then they don't get done. They get pushed back.
Right.
They get pushed away. My favorite project is the North Shore Interceptor, which when I'm in my first year on the select board, which goes back 18 years,
Right.
that was a priority 1 project for Water and Sewer Department.
Right.
It's on the drawing board as we speak today.
And I walked that job with the chief of maintenance while I was on capital planning about 14 years ago. And it was high priority at that point.
Right. Right, but it's not an issue that you're not going to really know about
No.
unless it fails.
Yeah, and at that point, I think it was estimated like $70,000, $80,000 to do the repair, and now it's multi-millions.
Right.
But there's more work been added to it.
Right, and
also.
and they're going to do it the right way, fix it the right way, so
Right.
we have access to it and everything. But my point is, those are the things that get pushed aside to do certain things, and you need to, if it bothers you, then you need to talk to your select board. And that's because they're the ones that direct the policy in town. The town manager follows those directives. Because the bigger issue that we have going on right now, and where if you can't take care of the little things, it's harder to take care of the big things, is we have a middle school proposal that's going to be coming down the road.
Right.
All right. I agree with what they're saying right now about having 1 middle school in town. I think it's the most practical thing to do,
Right.
in my opinion. You might disagree. I don't have kids that are going to any of those schools, so it doesn't affect me personally.
Right.
All right. But the issue is, I think it's the right thing to do. But before you do that, before we vote for that particular type of project, we need to know what's going to happen if that is 1 school. What happens to that other piece of property?
Right.
We can't go down the road and say, let's vote for a new school, vacate another one when it's done, and then say, now what do we want to do with it? Because quite frankly, we have an old TPW building. We have an old senior center, right? And we're utilizing now the senior center because town hall is going to go over
Right.
there, Park and Rec is there. But then what happens to our town hall, right? So we have a multi-million-dollar project that is going to be asked for funding, which I will support. But I think question is, after that, is that what are you going to do with Plan B, which is the property that potentially could be Glenbrook Middle School?
Right. Well, you mentioned the report. The report that you and I did, what, about 10, 12 years ago, was called Visions.
Correct.
And basically, it was not a mandate. It was something that we developed, and we presented that to several people. It was presented to the Select Board,
To the community at
Finance
large.
Committee.
The community
Who
at large.
else?
School committee. Community at large.
I mean, we dragged that dog and pony show around town quite a bit.
Took a lot of
And
crap
what
for
it
it,
was,
too.
it was intended to just generate interest and say, okay, you're right. All these things are out here. Now, you have just gone down through the laundry list of items that was on that.
Correct.
12 years ago.
Right.
And we're just starting to address them. And they should have been addressed back then.
Correct.
That's the master plan. You know, we knew 10 years ago, or seven years ago at least, that we had Williams. We did the SOI. We knew we were going to do something with Williams or with Glenbrook. And at that point, there was talk about migrating towards Williams. The old superintendent wanted to migrate towards Williams. And we said, okay, if you do, what are we going to do with that property? And by the way, right around the corner, you have the water tower property. What are we going to do about that property? Now, you were on the board when Borowski was on the board. That was his number one thrust. Let's develop the Watertown property.
Yep.
And it still sits vacant.
Right.
With no plans.
Correct.
It's not even on the planning sheet, I don't think, unless there's somebody else has put it on there just recently. But these were the things, and as a community, you look to your leaders to be looking into the future on this. And that's not your daily people. The guys and the ladies that are maintaining the structure today, they're not held accountable for that. We're talking about 2 or 3 levels above them. We're talking the division level on up to the select board, especially the select board. Under our form of government, our select board is supposed to provide the vision for the future, not the town manager. The town manager was hired to run this town and to implement plans developed or desires for the community and respond to the town meeting votes. And as I say, if that's not happening, we're not moving forward.
Right.
So I think what you do, right now, it's kind of ridiculous that we don't know what we're going to do with the property of one of those schools. One of those schools is likely going to be vacated.
Right. And the worst thing in the world that we can do is have a project that gets completed. Now, the high school is different because you built right on where the high school
Right.
was, right? But DPW is a great example. We were told that once that building was completed, all vehicles are going to be pushed over to the DPW
Right.
facility. It was big enough to house everything.
Everything.
And at the time, I guess it did. But we still use the old DPW facility for facilities maintenance, some storage of machinery, things like that. There's companies that are doing road projects, they store their machines on there, things like that. But that property should have either been sold or developed after that project was completed.
Right.
And we moved over. And it's still not. And I understand there's some talk of creating hiring a consultancy firm to study all of our properties in town and what we should do with them, and the vacant ones, I mean. But that's the plan that we should have, and that's what I'm saying is before you vote on the middle school project is we need to know what's going to happen with that Glenbrook property in some general idea, meaning we want to have it developed, we want to knock it down and make it a park, whatever it is. We should have an answer to what potentially that property could be, because it's also important for the residents who are around there to know what's going to be in their backyard now,
yeah,
right?
true.
Instead of a school, what's going to happen to it? You don't want to mothball it and have an empty building that becomes an eyesore or things like that, and,
True.
right? And we're not going to, hopefully not going to let that happen, but we need to have those answers prior to be doing some of these things. And again, 10 years ago, I'm not talking to you about this because we developed it and this vision and nothing happened. The select board wouldn't adopt it at the time. And all we wanted the select board to do was adopt it and charge the town manager to look into it, not to execute our vision. Because we
Right.
said our vision could be a little bit skewed.
Yeah, could be.
Could be, right?
But many of those items have actually become reality.
Everything was on the agenda
Right.
with what was going on. And so the point of it all is you need to ask questions now before this comes out, and ask questions of the select board, of the committees that are representing us in these scenarios. And it's not up to the school building committee to tell you what's going to happen to the Glenbrook property. That's not their charge.
Right.
Their charge is to bring forward what's the recommendation for the best interests of the town. It's up to the select board and the town manager to come to the citizens of the town with an idea of potentially what can happen with that. Am I out of?
No, I think that's the way our government was set up with our select board. That's the role and function of the select board.
Yeah.
They're supposed to be more the visionary and managing the town through the town manager or through whatever form of local
You're right.
government there is under that.
Yeah, and I mean, Liz, we have 6 schools,
Right?
right? We have 11 town buildings, I believe.
Yeah, 11 or 12 summers in
Right? 2 pools, lots of land to mow, playgrounds, parks, things
Yeah.
like that. So there's a lot to be done, and if they're not getting done now, it's not going to get any better when we build a new middle school. And you can, you know, I took a ride up to Wolf Swamp Field today. It's absolutely beautiful. They did a great job.
It's
on it,
gorgeous.
right? We're paying a lot of money to maintain that field.
Right.
But it looks like we're maintaining it,
Yeah.
right? And right now, it's probably one of the better fields in town, from my perspective.
It is the premier
of
field.
walking,
Right.
walking around these fields. It's just really great shape. But I don't think we have that same intent with everything else that we have in town, and that's my concern.
It's not evident.
No,
No, it's not evident.
you know,
But
like you said, your C test, right? The
Yeah.
visual quality
Yeah.
display of
Yeah, you just open
driving
your
around.
eyes and you can pretty well read what's happening in the community.
Right. So the point, not to bitch, not to complain, but to help people understand that these are issues that we have today that are going on, and they're significant. 99 miles of roads, 9 square miles of town that hasn't changed in over 70 years. What's changed is the priorities of how we're doing this, right? We had a charter change 20, no, maybe not 20, yeah, maybe 20 years ago. And it was supposed to consolidate all this stuff and make it all work together because we had a separately elected park board,
Right.
separately elected water and sewer commissioners. They had their own employees and they weren't reporting to the select board. And it's supposed to be working a lot more cohesively, in my opinion, than what it is today in terms of getting the job done. It was supposed to lower costs for operating costs for the town. Hasn't done that, and that's okay. That's government, all right? Government can't operate like a business, but they can have business practices
Right.
along the way. But what do you think is what do you see as the biggest need that we have in town? Besides the middle school, we know that.
Yeah, well, yeah, that's pretty obvious that that's going to take place. I think there is a lot of evidence now that we're doing some advanced planning. But the advanced planning is up here. It's really high level. Where I still see the deficiencies, in which I've stated all along, is below the senior management level. Because we want the senior managers to be visionaries. But they hire division chiefs, et cetera, to do the nuts and bolts routines. And where I see some of the failures in the nuts and bolts is down below. And you and I have talked about this. We said we should be able to ride our streets without dodging potholes or manhole covers. Those manhole covers have been there for years. They've not been touched since I've been here. And it's amazing. And you go like this going down Longmeadow Street, and everybody acknowledges that's what they do. They learn where they're at,
Yeah.
and they dodge around them. And we shouldn't have to do that. We should have flat, level streets. We should have water systems. We have sewage systems that are appropriate. We should have a reasonable paving schedule that we can anticipate. You remember I told you back in 10, 12 years ago, I presented a white paper to the board on the condition of our road system. And I said, you need to be spending $2 to $3 million a year. Based on the amount of roads, you got 90-some miles of road, you got an asphalt range from 15 to 18 years. Normally when you should be repaving, residential areas can go longer because they don't have the loading factors. That document still isn't out there. And we talked about it. I said, this is your minimum plan. And the sidewalks was the same thing. Now we put $400,000 a year into sidewalks. I'm not sure that window is being closed out to the select board and saying, okay, these are the projects we did with the money the town gave us last year. I haven't seen that document. That's called the closeout or the completion report. That's a failure in here because we give money, but we don't ask for accountability back. And you saw that on the board. I saw it on the board. We give $400,000 to the director of DPW, and they come back next year and ask for another 400 and says, well, what'd you do? And they kind of look at you like, well, we did maintenance. Well, what did you do specifically? What manholes did you repair this year? That should be there, Paul. All of that should be there. No one in this town can tell you what our deficiency backlog is right now. Not a single person, because you and I both know that study has not been done appropriately.
Okay, explain deficiency backlog.
If every year there should be a condition inventory of all critical resources in this community, Now, theoretically, you should look at every drop inlet and every outlet of a drainage structure in the winter in our town and write up deficiencies and put it into a computer as a work order. Say, this work has been recognized. You should go to ride the road, and every time you find a manhole cover that's down over a quarter of an inch, you should write it up and put it in the computer. Say, there work's required at this location, here's the estimated cost. At the end of the year, you roll this up and you go to the town manager and to the select board and you say, okay, under roads and maintenance, we have $4.8 million worth of identified deficiencies out here. If you give me $400,000, this is what I'm going to do with that money. And you do that with every single resource. People don't understand. We got how many roofs, thousands and thousands of dollars worth of roofing systems that need attention, especially with our schools, ventilation systems. All of these should be on some type of programmatic replacement program. Life cycle costs. We know they're going to wear out. We don't have to guess anymore. We know the roads need paving every 15, 22 years, whatever your cycle you want. Your mowing standards, like you and I talk about mowing standards, and you set a standard. The standard is not mow the grass 3 times a week. That's a task. The standard is the grass shall be maintained between 3 and 5 inches. That's your standard. And then you mow it to meet the standard. And you never change the standard. Now, if it gets 8 inches, you may change the frequency of doing it, but you never change the standard. Within inside of that, Paul, if I know I got 50,000 acres to mow, I can convert it to a mower that can mow for, say, 4 acres an hour. Immediately, I can convert that down to FTE, and I can come to you and say, Paul, this is how much the mowing program in this town I need every year to do the mowing. And Paul says, I said, well, I'll give you half. And I said, okay, I'm going to prioritize what part of the town I don't mow properly. And I'm going to identify it. And I said, this field is going to go to 12 inches. And then we're going to brush, boom axe it, okay? That's what I'm talking about, those type of things. It's kind of you manage what you have instead of this spontaneity. There was something on social media the other day that said apparently the town is watching Facebook because they talked about the Christmas tree, the weeds and all that were growing up and under it. Somebody removed them. And I said, that's horrible. They were proud of that fact. And I said, that's horrible. That the town would go to a website, a social media website, and find work orders. I mean, you stop and think, it shouldn't be that way. But the person was kind of proud of the fact that social media worked, but that's reactive. It's not programmatic.
Right. And that's my point.
Yeah.
The programmatic maintenance of the town.
Right.
Right. So, and you have to prioritize some things over. I mean, there are emergencies. There's always going to be an emergency. There's going to be a roof leak, an outfall that fails that you weren't expecting to fail, things like that. I mean, and we all acknowledge that sometimes you have to go off of the schedule.
Right.
But you should be able to get back onto the schedule.
That's the key.
Right.
You divert, you repair, and you go right back to your routine. The only thing I don't, and I'm not, it sounds like I'm being negative, but I'm just saying what I see with my eyes. I don't see the routine maintenance program year after year being followed. Yeah. I see sporadic energies. So it tells me that, like you behind the scenes. Now, I'm going to tell you personally, though, I used to teach this at a maintenance management school. And I went to the town manager back when you were on the board, Stephen Crane. I went to Stephen Crane and I said, I will go to maintenance and I will present a training course, the way we used to do at Ogilvy. And I said, it will teach your division, all your supervisors, how to develop standards, how to develop work programs, and put this down to dollars, and you'll have an entire blueprint of exactly what it costs to maintain this entire community for like a 50-year cycle. And it was flatly refused. Wouldn't allow me. You said that it was inappropriate to have a select board member give a training course in town. And I said, okay. I walked away from it.
Yeah.
I did the same thing with a recent director of public works. Made the same offer, 0. And I said, okay, I give.
Yeah. And folks, I got to tell you this, is that I think Long Meadow is I mean, I've been here for 37 years, and it's a great community. I always call it's not a town, it's a neighborhood.
Right.
You meet people because your kids play sports, or from one school to the next and so forth. We have great town employees, in my opinion. Okay. There's always outliers, good, bad, indifferent, doesn't matter, but we have great town employees. I have a problem every time we identify something and say, well, we have a shortage of employees.
Right.
Because it happens everywhere. There's shortages, sometimes there's shortages where teachers are out sick, where
Right.
there's shortages where cops are out sick or hurt, or firefighters, same thing. And we make adjustments. So the excuse can't be, well, it's the economy, and because other places are getting it done. It's not just Long Meadow that faces it. We're not unique. We don't have just the same problems. The only difference that we have is we're not a city or town. So
Right.
we don't get a lot of money from outside sources like
Right.
the state or the federal government. So it is on us. And my point in doing this show is, and we're going to continue to do shows like this, is to talk about a little bit of things a little bit more specifically, is to help you, hopefully to get you, or help you understand that it takes pressure from us, from the citizens of the town, to get the things done. It shouldn't, but the reality is you need to talk, because I hear it all the time about the potholes. Everybody complains about the potholes, the swerving, the damage to the
Right.
car, the tires and all that
Right.
stuff. Well, if you don't complain about it and you don't bring it up to the select board, not to DPW, but to the select board, and fix the potholes come mid-August, then they're not gonna get fixed.
Right.
Because I don't know when we're gonna do them.
Right.
I'm sure it's on a schedule somewhere to do it in November, just before the plants close. Right, but that's
Or
probably
squeaky maintenance, when the squeaky wheel
right.
gets it.
But it's unacceptable to live in this town. I think we get a fair share for our property taxes with fire, police, schools, everything. We just need to do a better job, I think.
Well, there's another thing should be mentioned too, Paul, is that historically, in my career, maintenance is always a stepchild.
Yep.
They always get whatever's left after the big sharks go through the water.
Yep.
Okay, and the big sharks is always the school system, your police department, fire department, and it goes down to trickle down.
Right.
And DPW usually is the last one to get their bite of the budget. And it's done for a reason. I mean, we have a police department that is unbelievable. We have a fire rescue department, unbelievable. You know that.
Yeah.
We both talked about that. I mean, we have services in this town that some major metropolitan areas don't have, the quality of the services. So I don't totally blame DPW per se. What I'm trying to bring up is the fact that doesn't preclude the fact that they could do the planning. They could implement the plans and keep coming to the select board and walk in and throw it down and say, look, I'm the director of DPW. You've been riding my case for 4 years. Here's the money I need. Either basically put up or shut up. I need this money. I can't do it without the money to get the support, because nobody, I mentioned before, DPW doesn't have a Lancer pride. Nobody really supports DPW to get these funds.
Yeah.
I mean, they're usually just the scraps of meat that they're picking up, or maybe some little federal highway money coming in, but they don't get the lion's share.
No. No, the only time you notice DPW when it's 2 o'clock in the morning and there's a water main break.
Or the
Right.
snow is flying.
Yeah, and you can't turn on your faucet in the morning, right? That's when you start to. I think it's lowest paid employees who do the hardest work, I think, in town. Period. And that's
Well, they're emergency
unfortunate.
responders too. People don't understand, and the
Right.
federal guidelines now, they're emergency responders.
Right.
Just like our fire and rescue. When something happens, a hazmat incident, they're brought under the control. They're in there too now.
Right. Yeah, we got to do something.
Yeah, I think they need to blow their horn, and they need to show their case, and that was why I wanted to share my expertise. To say, I said, this works, guys. I've seen it work before. It works. If you identify the resources, you tell the managers, I need this much money, they're much more prone to give you the money.
Yep. Okay. So, folks, school building committee is going to be coming at some point in time, talking to you about a new middle school. It's very important. Know about the issue, learn about the issue, but ask the follow-up question. What happens to the other property if we combine our 2 schools together? If we do 2 separate schools, everything stays the same. But if you build a new middle school, and it is one, what happens to that? That's a big piece of property over there. I forgot how many acres it was.
I think it's 17, isn't it?
Something like
17,
that,
somewhere
right?
in there.
All right, big
Maybe
piece
it's
of
15.
property, and we need to know what's going to happen to it before we vote for a new school. So thank you for watching, Rich. Thank you for coming on and sharing your
welcome.
expertise, and we'll see you on the next show, and hopefully dig a little bit deeper into these issues, and maybe I can get someone from our town government to come over and talk as well.
That'd be good.
Yeah, thank you for watching. Have a great day.
Thank you, Paul.
Thank you.